This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 322 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and with the Bundesliga bound to resume next week, we are back with a Q&A episode. And to answer all your questions, join me. Well, it's basically the entire band is back here together. Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I am doing quite well. How are you doing?
Well, I'm obviously not doing as well as you are, because I've read that you have been fly fishing?
Yeah, we're allowed to outdoor recreate in Colorado, and fly rods 9-10 feet long. If anybody decides to get a little closer than that, I just smack them in the face with it. So it's pretty easy.
Alright, it's interesting to hear about your social distancing tactics. Lars Pollmann also here. Hello Lars, welcome back. What are your social distancing measures?
Stefan, just don't have a social life. Don't have any acquaintances or friends, so you don't even see other people.
That works too, I guess. I assume it's going to be the same for Mr. Konstantin Eckner. Hello Konstantin, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Only Tindering on Wednesday.
Are you actually getting any matches?
Oh, I'm getting more matches than the Bundesliga in the past 7 weeks or so.
Boom! We're here all week.
Thank you.
All right, yeah. To any new listeners out there who may have chosen to opt to listen to this podcast because they have no idea what the Bundesliga is and somehow trying to find a way in, this is about as good as it gets on this show. So without any further ado, I'm very happy to announce that we have two sponsors for this episode. VEDRAN DEDIC is sponsoring this episode, and he is currently in the working stages of writing a book about his local team in Mobile, Alabama, which is called AFC Mobile, and he's hoping that it's ready to be published by next summer. We'll be looking out for that one, and he also sends his thoughts to everyone affected by the coronavirus pandemic. And this episode is also sponsored by Jordan Hunt, who is hoping that all listeners are staying safe and keeping well in these difficult times. And I hope this extends to the panelists as well. Anyway, let's get down to business. And before we answer your questions, Konstantin, since you are out there chilling, trying to get on CNN and MSNBC and whatnot, I've heard you are very well versed in the Bundesliga safety concept, which allows German football to resume again. So if you have any capability to summarize it, here's your stage.
Really? This I think 53 pages? So give me an hour.
You have 10 sentences or less.
10 sentences?
You.
Yeah, all right. So, I mean, the gist of it is that the Bundesliga, German Football League, DFL, I mean, they're relying on repeated testing. Players, staff will be tested twice a week. If they play on Wednesday and on Saturday, they will be tested right before the two matches. Otherwise, they will be tested before the Saturday match, for instance, and during the week before training somewhere there. So that's one major thing. There's also some antibody testing going on, but only for research purposes, because German medical institutes are trying to find out if antibody testing is also reliable, which isn't proven yet. So that's one thing. And then then the German Football League has released a quite sophisticated, I think, hygiene protocol, which involves 1,000 steps. All right. Just it's really about that there are only up to 320 people allowed inside and outside close to the stadium on match day, and only around kickoff these 320 people will be present at the same time, because the hours before that, there were people coming in, then you got all the people in at kickoff, and then afterwards, or really shortly after the final whistle, lots of people will leave again, and so it's really it's more or less called a dynamic personnel plan. Meaning that you don't have all these people all the time there. It starts when you play 3:30 in the afternoon. It starts really 8 o'clock in the morning when the queen keepers, for instance, come in. They can take care of the pitch early in the morning, and then our people come in and do their stuff. Television production people set up cameras, and the VAR people are coming in 10 o'clock. Have to work hard to do the VAR stuff. So players are. The teams will stay in hotels or training facilities. Let's say you're a home team, you might stay in your training facility, stay there overnight, and stay there for 7, 8, 9 days. Not meeting your family, not getting any visits. It's more like a little bit of a prison. Although
Dortmund will stay in a team hotel for the next 7 days.
They will, yeah. And Bayern Munich, for instance, they have rented the Infinity Hotel in Schleißheim, the largest hotel and conference center in southern Germany. But RB Leipzig, they will stay in Kotterweg, and they are on that training ground. Everyone has their own room with television and internet access and all this stuff. So it's a little bit different, but still, they all try to figure out it. Hamburg SV. Second division club will stay probably at the 5-star Grand Elysee hotel in Hamburg. So, just for a little bit gossip there. So the players are expected to leave these hotels and training facilities around, I think, 2.5. It depends a little bit where they are. 2.5 hours before kickoff. Then they will come into the stadium. Will dress, but they are supposed to be spread out across the locker room areas. Clubs are expected to use as many rooms as possible there. It's easier when you had something like the Allianz Arena with the large spaces. When you are a Schalke, you have a little bit of a problem if you know the infrastructure of the stadium. So, but they have to try to figure out something. And all the players, when they come to the stadium, they will wear face masks. They can only take them off once they are on the pitch. Talking about face masks, that's interesting. So, unless you're a player or a referee on the pitch, you're a linesman, you have to wear a face mask. There was a memo released today, meaning today is Friday, so that their coaches can actually take off their face masks to shout something across the pitch if they want to. But they have to stay, keep distance to others. 1.5 meters is basically the magic number there. Also on the bench player have to wear face masks, and they also have to leave 1 or 2 seats empty between each other, or what also a couple of clubs are right now exploring is to use the stands behind the bench to host a couple of bench players there or a couple of staff members. That's about it. And really the stadium will be split into 3 sections. You have one section, the inner area where the players are and so on. There are 100 people, around 100 people is give or take. Then you got this second section that's all the stands with the press area, and so there are 100 people there. Video analysts and people from the German FA who observe the match and stuff like that. And then you got also an additional 100 people basically around the stadium, security personnel, paramedics, and so on. And production people outside. So that's basically how it will look, and it will be interesting. And there are lots of interesting tidbits you can explore. It's, for instance, there won't be any handshakes before kickoff. There won't be any player escorts before kickoff. There won't be any team pictures taken before kickoff.
I actually have a question. You were just talking about the zoning, basically, that you have 3 sections, and you have a maximum of 300 people or 320, and I think the rule is that no more than 100 people can be in one zone at the same time. So I think it says as an example that if you have 150 people in zone 1 and 50 people in zone 2, it also is not possible. How is this being enforced?
right?
Who's taking care of that and who's counting the people and where they are? Because stadiums are quite big and it's very hard to keep oversight.
Right, absolutely. What you just said. It's 100 and a little bit in some of these sections. So it's around 100 people. As I said, I counted it at kickoff time. You have 322 people in this area, inside and close outside the stadium. But of course, in the second Bundesliga, for instance, there are less people there, and you don't have to reach the maximum number of people. If you have less, it's the better. So what they will do is right at, let's say, 10 o'clock or so in the morning, over 30 security officers will be there to enforce it. If you want to get in, you need credentials. You need a passport or some kind of credential. It's really enforced. And even the player have to show their credentials that they get in. It's not like face check or something. Maybe it will be a little bit. If Marco Reus arrives at the Signal Iduna Park, I guess he will get in without showing his accreditation or something like that. I guess, but you know what I mean. It's really very strict in terms of security checks getting into these areas, and really you are only assigned to area 2, area 1, or something like that, and then you can get in. So it's really down to that. And there will probably be additional police forces at some of these matches. Revier Derby, is expected that Dortmund police will secure the match with additional officers because maybe fans want to get in or other stuff will happen, so they have to do that. Of course, low-key match, low-profile matches, you don't really have that, but still, police will be present. As police is present everywhere... in the cities because of COVID-19. So I guess that's business as usual right now, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think we'll come back a little bit to that subject due to the questions that we received. But let's take a little break from the safety concept of the German Task Force Sportmedizin, or whatever it's called. And today there was some news from the IFAB, which is not Apple's latest masturbation device, but the football board that makes the rules. And they suggested that leagues are now allowed to use 5 substitutions, but can only take 3 breaks. Or 3 interruptions, if you will. Lars, what do you make of this rule? Would you appreciate it, or do you think it's rubbish?
Well, first of all, the 36 members of the DFL, the German League Association, would have to agree on actually putting that rule in place in Germany, which Christian Seifert, the CEO of the DFL, on Thursday called a possibility, but not a necessity. So, given that it's still more than a week before the first game, I think there's still time to do that, but I'm pretty certain it's not going to be, a unanimous decision in favor. Today, Julian Nagelsmann, head coach of Leipzig, came out against the idea, for example, saying that concerns over players' lack of fitness after these 7 or 8 weeks without match practice are overblown, because I think this is a direct quote: "We didn't spend all these weeks on Copacabana."
Speak for yourself, Mr. Nagelsmann.
Yeah, he fears that these substitutions will only be used in a tactical sense to work the clock, basically, which I guess, with the caveat you mentioned of the 3 interruptions, is kind of alleviated, but still... I personally don't see necessarily a real reason for it. Maybe the players are a bit rusty in the first couple of games, but they are still highly professional, highly motivated professional athletes, basically. So I would assume that they can get back into the shape of things quickly enough for there not to be this massive intrusion in what we know as football, because, football is 90 minutes with 11 players on the pitch and 3 substitutions, and that's been the case since, I think, like the early 70s or something. So, I mean, especially considering Germany is the first league back, I think there might be some push from, international figures, maybe UEFA, FIFA representatives, for Germany to actually enforce this rule just to see how it goes in, a professional setting. But I personally don't really see why that would be the case.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I think your initial reaction when I read it out in the pre-pod was that Lucien Favre wouldn't make use of them anyway, so it would be futile. Matthias, I guess it's time to move on to the questions, and the first question comes from Coelho, and he says, question is, does anyone actually care about football right now? And I think we can add the next question to it from Han Forte at Deutsch Stache. What would it take to cancel the season?
Well, I mean, to answer the first question, caring is a difficult thing. As someone who falls smack dab into the middle of the high-risk category, I still really care about it because it's kind of one of those distractions you can feel that people need, something that's a little bit different. So that, I mean, I see it. I've got 2 kids at home. They're not going to school here. And even though we're enjoying a little bit lower paced life, you fall into boredom pretty quickly and stuff like that. And it's a welcome distraction in a time when too many people, it's very quick and easy to kind of fall in the mental trap of everything being bad and negative. And so this gives you something positive to look forward to. I mean, you just look at how excited people were about the frickin' NFL draft because it was sports related and nobody was even playing anything. And by the way, I really like the way they did the draft, and I hope they always do it that way. So I think people care in the sense of have a distraction, something different to talk about and focus on other than this. Plus, the caring is also beyond just us as fans. If you look at how many people's jobs and livelihood are at stake, from people that work at the clubs, that work at the league, broadcasters, journalists, networks, all that stuff, you have to care because these are also people's livelihoods and jobs at stake. And what would it take to cancel the season? I think if there's just a massive health fallout. I mean, we see it. It would have to be pretty extreme because when you see in times past or even this last winter, if a huge section of a club, I remember Dortmund had that wave as 1.2 where a lot of players were down with an illness, be it a stomach bug or anything like that. They still went on to play, just those players didn't. So I don't know exactly where that number is and how long the recovery time and all that kind of stuff would be implemented. I think the only thing that would really shut it down at this point, now that it's going to take place, is if there's a massive fallout health-wise as far as people becoming acutely sick from this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when someone dies, that might be a point, but I honestly don't know where you draw the line, and I guess situations escalate quite quickly, as we've learned at the start of the coronavirus, and how quickly things went from we'll play without any spectators to we won't play at all. So I would not I wouldn't rule it out that the season actually doesn't finish, but I think it's still okay to try. In my opinion, I think other people will have different opinions and think this is basically a waste of time and a risk for a lot of people. But I don't know. Looking from the United States to Germany, it seems like over there things are quite in control. I wouldn't be able to say the same about how things are going here. Lars, next question comes from Ed Zagadunyo, and he asks, or she asks, thoughts on how the team will be affected without any fans. I think we should do something like what Gladbach are doing. First of all, what are Gladbach doing, and should Dortmund do that as well?
Gladbach have offered their fans, and I think it's also would-be away fans at this stage, because it's been such a huge success, to buy, I guess, cardboard cutouts of themselves, basically. So if you're a diehard Gladbach fan, you could invest a little bit of money. It's not particularly expensive as far as I know, to have a facsimile of yourself in, what is it in Gladbach? I think the North Stand is where the most ferocious Gladbach fans are standing usually. And I think they have something like 12,000 of these, what they call Pappkameraden, standing in the North Tribune of Gladbach for, to simulate support. And basically it's mostly a PR thing that kind of has taken a life on its own and is kind of a neat thing to connect fans to the club without the ability to go to games, presumably for the rest of the year, if not even longer. So yeah, I mean, should Dortmund do that? If anyone else does it now, it's just to copy what Gladbach did. They had a pretty nice idea. I think that was also in or came up in discussions with actual fan representatives. So if anyone else did it now, it would look kind of cheesy and whatnot. So I wouldn't necessarily do that. I think the concept paper the DFL has published to the clubs says that fans can still show messages of support or whatever, bring banners into the stadium, as long as obviously while taking them there and fixing them to whatever posts or whatever, the social distancing rules are still followed. But I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, on the yellow wall we saw a couple of flags and banners and whatever, just so it's not a slab of concrete, basically. And as for how much the players will be affected, I mean, that's basically the $1 million question right now. Nobody really knows. I mean, Dortmund played a ghost game at Paris in the Champions League and dropped out, and kind of
I'd forgotten about that, man.
and it kind of felt like they didn't have the energy level. But then again, that was away to a very good team. So would that have been the same for a normal Bundesliga game? I don't know. I do think that Dortmund might be suffering more than other clubs, just because this season Dortmund were the only Bundesliga team to be unbeaten at home. And, I think the Yellowwallpod would be remiss if we acted like fans don't have anything to do in that.
No, of course. I mean, ironically, the last home loss that Dortmund suffered was against Schalke, which is also the next game coming up. And also the next question, I hope it's not a loaded one, but it seems it is. At Tragedia 1917 asks, without fans, can BVB win anything? Konstantin.
I mean, sure, because someone has to win something without fans.
Yeah, but is that BVB?
I don't know. Maybe.
The question before was, can Dortmund win anything with fans? But now.
I guess they can, because I think players will get used to the situation, and our teams all. I mean, sometimes I think Dortmund fans, have to accept that other stadiums or other teams in their home stadiums are also getting great support, and are also supported and have these emotional bond with their fans. Maybe not as many fans because stadiums are smaller, fan base is smaller. Still, it's not like Dortmund is the only team here in the situation that loses home games with great support. There are others too. So I think that players will get used to it. It will be a different situation. I think the matches will be affected to some extent. Talking to a couple of head coaches, not only from the Bundesliga but also second Bundesliga, that it will be a bit of a different game because of the break, but also because of the atmosphere. But I think if you are a team that has the quality, and Dortmund certainly has the quality, then I think you can adapt to the situation and can make the best of it. So I wouldn't wouldn't hang it on the fact that there aren't any fans. I think it's like when we talk about who's better playing in snow. Well, both teams play in snow at the same time, so maybe it's more about adaptability.
Yeah, Mr. Tuchel always gotta adapt. Of course, his mantra. Matthias, next question I will hand to you. It's from Daniel iPad, and he asks, do you think the championship will now be decided by the team with the biggest depth, in brackets Kadertiefe? How does Dortmund compare in this regard with their competitors?
Well, I mean, the situation hasn't really changed when it comes to depth. I mean, anybody that was injured before has probably gotten past and over a lot of those issues. I don't really... It's hard to say because we don't even know what's going to happen with European competitions and cup competitions. So fixture congestion is more just the Bundesliga at this time. Bayern, we all know, don't have a lot of depth in their squad, but the quality is really high. It's honestly, to me, it hasn't really changed much. I don't think this stresses that any more than anything else, because if you look at the top teams, this time of year, if we take this time of year as in back in March, because this time of year, usually the season's coming to a close pretty soon, they're playing 2-3 matches in a 7 to 10 day span anyway, so I don't really see it being any graver or more weighted now than it was 2 months ago.
Yeah, maybe it was aimed toward if players get tested positive and then have to quarantine. Maybe that was the thinking behind the question, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I mean that's hard to speculate.
That's a lottery anyway. So
yeah, it whether it's COVID or any other illness or falling down on your face at home, Achselwitze. There are things outside of your control that you can't plan for, and at this point, that's a moot point because no one's moving clubs right now anyway. So it is what it is. As much as I hate that saying.
Yeah, speaking of it is what it is, what is the status of Royce? Asks John Blaylock. Lars, what is the status of Royce?
Royce is a hobby astronomer these days, which was revealed when he interviewed for some private German TV station, I forgot. As for the football part, he is still injured. As is usually the case when we talk about Marco Reus on this podcast. He is probably going to feature in some of these games coming up, but as always, I believe it when I see it. So he said, I think end of May is kind of his target date to re-enter, full-on team training and matches, but, we'll see.
Yeah, I've read today somewhere that he might return for the game against Wolfsburg, which I actually find utopic at this point. But he picked up a muscle injury in, was it late, mid, or early February? I don't even remember, in the cup match against Werder Bremen. And, I think the initial diagnosis was like 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that, and yeah, it's dragged out a little bit since then, but it's also nothing we haven't seen before. At Awesome Bill 3 asks about fans zooming, skyping or whatever into, I don't know, chants, basically pipe fans via speakers into the stadiums. The DFL or whoever has already banned that. So it's not going to be possible to blur out any noise or fan noise, any canned noise into the games to simulate a more realistic atmosphere. Also,
Dortmund aren't the Atlanta Falcons, so
there's that too. Anywho, I didn't know the Atlanta Falcons did that, which is
they weren't penalized for it because they are not the New England Patriots.
Right. Anywho, next question.
Open up yourself to hate mail.
I don't know if we can even talk about NFL right now because face masks are illegal there. Anyway, next question comes from BVB Boston, and he asks, how are the various municipalities going to handle match days in the current environment, Konstantin?
They will handle it how they handle anything else, I guess. It's not really down to the cities and Landkreise, the regional districts.
I think I skipped the second part of his question, which reads, are they going to take extra steps to ensure fans aren't congregating in large groups outside the stadiums?
Okay.
As we, for example, saw in the Champions League game where Dortmund played against PSG, and there were a lot of fans outside of the Parc des Princes or whatever it's called.
Sure, but it was also a different time. It was way before, basically, a city like Bergamo was not wiped out, but heavily battered by the virus. So I think people have learned a thing or two. Not all people have learned a thing or two, but I think a lot of people didn't really realize what the situation was back when Dortmund played Paris. And I mean, now they should have learned. Back then it was a different time. So now I got the question, because as I mentioned before, teams are taking care. They rent accommodations, or they just use their training grounds to accommodate players. So that's down to the teams. And we only talk about like 50 people. This players and staff are 50 to 60 people. So I mean, we have factories reopening. That's a different kind of animal than like football clubs going around. Down to that. I mean, it's not really down to the cities and Landkreise. It's more up to the states, the federal states, because they employ the police forces that would be present at matches. I think they will assess the situation case by case. Police is in the know when it comes to fan groups, when it comes to which fan group might be organizing something. That's just part of the gig there. So I think that if they expect something, yes, they will. As I mentioned in the early goings of this podcast, that they will employ police forces in large numbers. There will be police officers present at every match. But of course in small numbers when they don't really expect anything to happen. I think the real derby, as far as I know, Dortmund-Schalke, the Dortmund police will be visibly present outside the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume if there would be any, I don't want to say congregation, but if people have an itch to be close to the ground or something, it might be that game in particular, especially with the euphoria maybe. That things return, or however. I also.
But one thing to keep in mind, that the hardcore fans and a lot of ultra groups are against the restart of the season. So we have to keep that in mind. There's heavy protests from ultra groups and hardcore fans against the resumption of the season. So I don't expect them to see it there. Because they don't like what's going on. They don't like these quote-unquote ghost matches, these spectator-free matches. They are opposing them. So being outside, I mean, maybe for protests, but on the other hand, I don't think, because their major statement, or their mission statement right now is, they, meaning the ultra groups and some of the active fan groups, is that we should support our communities and not think about football. So then coming to protest the match and don't obey social distancing rules, it would contradict the statements they have put out for weeks now. So,
yeah, I think that's important to note. And I think today somewhere I read a poll. I don't know how current it is, but that about 50% of the German population are actually against the resumption of the Bundesliga, and about 30% are for it.
Yeah, what Deutsche Welle did a poll. Yeah, it was like 60-30, something like 60 against 30.
Yeah, and like 20% just don't care, something like that.
Math doesn't add up, but yeah.
No, it does.
Yeah, 60-30-20. Of course it does. Yeah.
No, I said 50, 30, 20. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, next question from Steve Berkowitz. And he has actually 3 questions. And the first question is, what are BVB's goals for the rest of the season? Lars, I guess survive is the number 1 goal.
Win the championship. Fairly easy.
Right.
Like, what else? I mean, not become 5th. Like, don't drop so many points that Bayer Leverkusen suddenly overtake you. Well, I mean, that's not going to happen. So, all guns blazing. You have Bayern at home. So, 4 points of a disadvantage at this point. So, you can kind of guess that you have to probably win at least 8 of these 9 games.
All right. That sort of also answers the second question. What do you think the player's mindset is like now? Matthias, if you have any other shout of what the mindset probably is right now, please indulge me. I guess overall some might be concerned with their family safety or something like that. I mean, there was a little falling out with Bürgerverstreter, or what is his name, from SFC Köln, but I haven't really read much about it, to be honest, so I don't exactly know what happened there.
I'll be honest, I'm not going to speculate. I think over the last 2.5 months, plenty of people can be accused of speculative journalism and selling it as fact, and I know what people think, or what they should think. I don't know. I know from all I can speak is how I feel as a parent of kids and a husband and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to speculate how Marco Reus or Mario Götze or Axel Witsel or Roman Bürki or Lucien Favre think, or what their mentality is. I don't know.
All right, so the third question is more of a financial one. What's happening with the Champions League payouts after the cancellation? Konstantin, do you know that? Because I certainly do not.
No, it's still up in the air. What will happen? I mean, if you like the payouts for matches that already happened, I mean, the payouts will there. I mean, I think the money has already been paid to the clubs. So what's going to happen with the remaining payouts? Basically, if you are in the quarterfinals or something, right now nothing. Right now, nothing, because there are still talks going on about all these things within the UEFA and beyond, actually, the UEFA. So we will see. I mean, as far as Dortmund is concerned, Dortmund shouldn't be concerned about it because they dropped out. And so there is no claim to be made from Dortmund's side for any kind of Champions League money right now. It's also much more, I think we will see a shift as far as the decision making goes in a couple of weeks, when really entities like the UEFA will pivot towards what's going on next season and how we will actually have football next season. Because even that is very much in the air as of this point. I mean, Bundesliga is a shiny light, but it's only one. And if you look around, it's kind of difficult to really make plans for international football and just domestic football and all this stuff. So we will see. And also, what of course is a major issue, and that's a major issue that has that still concerns the Bundesliga and the German Football League, and it also concerns the UEFA, is what's going on with what will happen with the television rights money. Of course, television rights holders aren't really keen to pay money for matches that aren't broadcasted. Rightfully so, in my opinion. So there are also plenty of high-profile matches in the Champions League and in the Europa League, especially semi-finals and finals, that won't be broadcasted. So what's going on with that? And there are, let's put it that way, there are deals to be made. And just like the Bundesliga made a deal with Sky before even getting the green light from the political authorities to resume the season, a deal with Sky Germany was already being made, and you can probably imagine that the deal involves more than just paying money for the next month. It's is interesting times for let's say smart negotiators.
Yeah, or bribery and blackmail, as it is usual.
Stefan, please, please.
All right. Let's turn our focus a little bit to the transfer questions that we received, and I'll actually start with this one from Christopher at Mr. Libertine. How does this affect the buy low, sell high transfer policy of the club? Are we likely to try and hold on to Sancho at all for another season until the transfer market rebalances, or let them go, cut price to bring through the next generation, Lars?
I think pretty much every player that would have gone in the summer market but is under contract beyond 2021, so the Sanchos, the Havertzes, and whoever else, unless they have a release clause, obviously, and some club is able to activate that, which might be the case, for example, for Lautaro Martinez of Inter Milan. But, the Sanchos and Havertz, I would thoroughly expect them to stick around for another year, which obviously in the case of Sancho would be pretty good for Dortmund, even though I think with the financial outlay made in January for both Erling Haaland and Emre Can, I think Dortmund kind of expected to have some influx of cash in the summer for, this English kid on the right wing usually. So, I mean, keeping Sancho is great, but, the plans might have been different at that point anyway. But, generally speaking, I think a club that has a decent squad and stability in key areas, head coaching situation, sports management, if you like, I think most of those kinds of clubs will stay put, or more or less. I don't think a club like Dortmund is going to make suddenly, 5-6 bigger signings, unless, Manchester United say, I don't care, give me Sancho, whatever it takes. I mean, that could always change things, because if you're flush with cash this summer, you can really, put your hands on the throat of a selling club, especially if a talented player is only under contract until 2021, because obviously this is the window in which you usually would sell those players, but it's not necessarily a seller's market this summer. So certainly going to be interesting, but my prediction would be Sancho staying at Dortmund for another year.
Yeah, so there's a hypothetical question here from Connor at Gottschek on Twitter, and he asked, would you move Sancho on and bring in Havertz this summer if possible, Matthias?
No. I mean, I guess hypothetically speaking, honestly, I think right now there's going to be a lot of stay put mentality. Unlike, as was just stated, there is a release clause somewhere and somebody is willing to take that calculated risk depending on what can and can't come in financially. That's a tough one. Knowing that Sancho definitely will at some point go to England, and Havertz will leave Bayer Leverkusen to then maybe stop him from going to Bayern, that could be a possibility, then maybe yes. But as you could see, I am struggling for a definitive answer in a very hypothetical situation.
Yeah, fair enough. Here's the next question for you, Matthias. Connor Rammer-Larsen at Connor Ramler on Twitter asks, who would you rather keep, Zagadou or Hakimi?
Zagadou. No doubt. I mean, was that quick enough of an answer?
Yes. Konstantin, next question from Nick Doré for you, and it's a very broad one. Who are some players you think we should try to transfer in this summer, and also who do you think we should try to transfer out?
Let's start with transferring people out. Out. We should transfer them out.
No, first buy everyone you can pressure others to leave.
What I have to say is, because the situation has fundamentally changed, if a player is reliable and wants to stay, you have to think about keeping the player right now. I mean, what we have to keep in mind in this entire transfer situation is that maybe there are players who aren't really fond of moving to England right now. Just a thought. So I don't know about Italy. Of course, I mean, yeah, there is some relaxation and everything is calming down a little bit. Still, there are some major concerns you can have as someone who might have options. So I think they can think about selling Mahmoud Dahoud. Just because, I mean, it never has panned out, really. What was expected once upon a time.
Matthias would disagree, though. He thinks this transfer was always a hit, but,
Yeah, I know. As our resident Dahoud fanboy. So then you have to think about the loanees, André Schürrle.
I think a lot of people just had a spit take listening to this, having completely forgotten about André Schürrle.
Yeah, he's still a Dortmund player, and he actually gave an interview a short while ago where he said, "Yeah, we'll just come back to Dortmund in the summer. Then we will see." So yeah, there's one. And then I think you can. I mean, it will be hard, but maybe Nico Schulz. I don't know. I think you should keep him because I think that the payout or the transfer fee you could get is not that high at this point. Given also that a lot of these transfer fees will be relatively low this summer, so you have to really consider if you want to sell someone under quote-unquote market value. On the other hand, if you are a club who has liquidity and can buy players, basically like on the stock market, now it's the time. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think Dortmund is one of the clubs that has liquidity, so Dortmund can play the long game here, as opposed to Schalke and even maybe Mönchengladbach. By the way, they're still looking for a main sponsor for their jerseys. So in terms of signing people, I think the Bellingham transfer is more or less a done deal. So I think that's a big one. Versatile player. So that's something. Muniz is, I think, a done deal, which I like. Experienced, mature player, right back, right wing back. So that's something to take a little bit the pressure off old man Piszczek. Although Muniz is basically the same age. So what I'm saying here. And then it really becomes hard to really think of any options in the Bundesliga at this right now. I think it's really hard. I think one player I would like to see at Dortmund is next season is Moussa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen. Going the old route of just buying some of Leverkusen's key players to have someone new and to keep Leverkusen at bay. So I guess Diaby is someone I would like to see at Dortmund, especially if really Sancho leaves. Would be a nice replacement and would be, quote unquote, not cheap, but not as expensive as other players, I think. So these are three I would like to see. Other than that, you really have to wait. You really have to wait right now to see how the situation unfolds within the next month or so, or within the next 2 months or so. Also in other countries, because maybe you have a second wave somewhere or something, and really the situation gets pretty bad, and then you can be opportunistic. I know it sounds a little bit evil, but then you can be opportunistic, right?
Yeah. I will add that keeping Bayer Leverkusen at bay can't be that hard since they already play at the Bay Arena. So,
thanks for explaining the joke.
Yes,
Stefan.
You're
My
very
God.
welcome.
How long do we know each other?
That's my only job here. But Lars, are there any transfers you would like to see, either in or out?
I mean, the outs are, I would say, relatively obvious. I mean, most of the loaned out players probably don't have a future at Dortmund. I think you can perhaps flip some of these guys. Like Jeremy Toljan had a very decent season at Sassuolo. So provided Italy doesn't, become a war zone in the next 2 months, I think you could probably get, a decent sum of cash from, let's say, Roma for him, because obviously Favre doesn't rate him and he won't play at Dortmund, but he did have a solid season there. So that's basically 6 or 7 players that are not going to come back, which obviously might be helpful because you don't want to clutter your squad completely. Personally, I really like Diaby, as Konstantin mentioned. I don't think he's necessarily a realistic option in case Sancho stays, as I predicted earlier. So I think I like Ruben Vargas of Augsburg. Not a lot of people necessarily take note of an attacking player from Augsburg during this season, but
especially not Lukas Piszczek during this season. Didn't take note at all.
Yeah, why would he? I mean, They still won both games. I mean, he's quite versatile. He's quick. He wouldn't necessarily command a huge amount of cash in terms of the transfer fee. He wouldn't command the starting spot next season, but might grow into a Sancho replacement with a year on his belt at Dortmund. So I think that would be a good, decent depth option.
So you're saying this is the Marius Wolf transfer, but done right?
Yeah, maybe it's more of a smaller version of the Torgan Hazard deal, because I think the ceiling of Vargas is quite high. And one more thing that I would definitely try if I were in charge, to sign a decent right-footed centre half, because Zagadou and Hummels can only play together in a back three, I would say, and both obviously focused on the left side. And at right centre back, you have Piszczek, who's very old, still does a decent job at centre half, but I mean he's getting up there. And Akanji, who is actually, I would say, one of the candidates to actually get some cash in at Dortmund if his dream of playing for Manchester United. I think that's a halfway realistic option. So I would sign a youngish upside centre half, strong right foot. I mean, it's a pipe dream, but Marash Kumbula of Verona, he's had a superb season in Serie A, but I mean, he's as most players in Italy will probably have to choose between Juventus and Inter, and not going to come to Dortmund. But that kind of profile, a high upside young centre back with a strong right foot that can complement Zagadou and Hummels, would be quite close to the top of my list. Because if you look at the entire team of Dortmund, you don't really see, outside of the right back position or right wing back position, where we can assume Hakimi is gone. I mean, where else is there an opening for a strong transfer to come in? There's always places you can improve, obviously, and certainly in depth with a couple of guys here and there, but I mean, in Dortmund's best 11 right now, I think the two spots you have to look at is right back and right centre half.
By the way, did you know that Thomas Meunier was only 28 years old? I actually thought he was older.
No, I heard you say he was as old as Piszczek and was.
I was a little bit joking because I was actually thinking he was 32 or something, and at 28.
No.
Because he feels like he has been around since, I don't know, since forever.
He also looks older and has the kind of body type that looks, always a bit old. But
and also because the name Meunier is around for so long. I mean, even if it wasn't like a key player, but still, it's interesting to just think about it. Yeah, but
and he's been linked with clubs for 6 or 7 years. Like Manchester United were in for him in like 2013 or whatever.
Right, when you were when you were assuming that maybe he was like 25 or so back then, because was his peak, he was much younger, and also with the Belgian team because he's around forever there. It's interesting to because I actually was thinking that he was a little bit old, so that gives a plus to the transfer if he comes. 28 is still good, although I mean Nico Schulz, 27, 26, so. Didn't work out.
Anyway, Matthias, do you have a list made of players you want to see in and players you want to scrap?
I think we've beaten that horse
Okay,
pretty
good.
strongly now, and I have nothing to add to what the fine gentlemen have just said.
All right, neither do I. So I think that should conclude our first revamp of the Yellowwallpod, and I think we can answer more listener questions if there are any next week, and where we will obviously try to preview the review derby without anything else to say, I guess. So that's going to be very interesting. I'll see if I can get a guest on who can shine a light on what's going on at Schalke 04. But in the meantime, I thank everyone out there for listening and for the well wishes. And now it's time for you guys to tell how to connect with you on the Twitter webs. Matthias, you can go first if you want. Very nice. Lars?
Yeah, keep your social distancing up at Lars Pollmann.
And Konstantin?
Don't follow him. That's what you meant.
Correct. It's just shitty F1 content at the moment anyway.
No, it's superb F1 content.
Yeah, that's actually pretty great. Are you also playing other games? I'm playing ACC right now. All right. Okay. Then not. I'm struggling.
I've watched a streamer yesterday who played that game because right now I only have a MacBook and I basically can't play any racing games minus Grid Autosport. So it's very sad for me, especially I had Formula 1 2013 running on here. I was inspired by Lars and I was doing full Grand Prix racing, like the whole shebang, and then stupid me updated to Mac Catalina, not knowing that it's the Mac upgrade to the 64-bit from the 32-bit, and now half the games don't run anymore. So I've been extremely gutted. So if anyone out there in the greater Philadelphia area has a gaming computer they no longer need, I'll happily take it. So, but anyway, where can people follow you, Constantine?
Yeah, if anyone has any advice as how I take turn 1 and turn 2 at Misano at ACC, well, then drop me a line because I'm struggling. So
can maybe check Jimmy Broadband's stream.
He's not. He's fun, but he's not. I mean, he's good.
Not fast.
He's not that. No. There you have to David Perrell, who's actually a GT3 driver for Ferrari for Ronaldo Racing. So check him out. He's really actually fast. Broadband is more of an influencer like Super GT.
Yeah, you're right.
So
it's funny how it took 55 minutes for finally the content we all wanted to talk about.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm struggling with Misano World Circuit right now in my Audi, so that's something. I'm check my Twitter profile. CC_ECKNER is the handle. Have a couple of text features stories brewing right now. So yeah, check it out in English and in German. I will probably be present at the first match day after the break. I don't know at which match, but I will be present somewhere and will actually cover that because that's kind of a shit show I want to cover. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, stay safe. Anyway, send all your high-end gaming machines, Xboxes, PlayStations, and whatnot to @StefanButzko on Twitter, or Philadelphia, to be honest. But no, as always, thank you all, everyone out there, for listening, and you can get in touch with all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to read our written content, go to theyellowwall.net. If you want to sponsor an episode like VEDRAN and Jordan, then go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information. And I'm glad to say until next week, goodbye.